Today's metal review is going to be kind of brief and kind of nonchalant, as you can obviously tell. Why? Because the career of the band that I'm looking at today was very brief and nonchalant. We're going to be looking at No One, the only release from the band No One. No One originally went by the name Black Talon in 1994. They were formed in Chicago, Illinois by Rick Moraski and Bob Beelers. They switched in between different members over the years until they finally settled on a lineup in about 2000 or 1999, which sounds more like the lineup to a Saturday morning cartoon than it does a metal band. But honestly, this isn't too surprising considering that they're a new metal band, and new metal bands really do sound like the lineups to Saturday morning cartoons when you look at their stage names. I'm going to read some of their stage names and some of their actual names from Wikipedia, and you let me know whether or not this would have been a cartoon you would have watched as a kid. Band members: Merc, Rick Moraski on vocals; Billy Kay, Billy Kaznitz on drums; Flair, Mike Flaherty on bass; and Knuckles, Rick Oliphirk on bass. Past members include founding member Bob Beelers, B-L-A-R-Z, his name is B-Lars as his stage name, and I really want to be delicate talking about this. The reason that he's not in the band anymore is, for one, they disbanded in 2003. I'll get into why in a moment, but he's also deceased. Apparently he, a friend, and his wife were involved in a boat capsizing accident in 2014, and he was killed. So was everybody on board. I want to mention that because I think that's an important thing to mention. I just don't want to focus on upsetting things like that too much, because stuff like that really sucks, and I'm sad to read that even happened to him. So my condolences. That's fucking awful. This album was released in 2001 on Immortal Records and Virgin Records. They tried to promote the hell out of it and even got so far as getting on Ozfest in 2001 alongside bands like Slipknot and System of a Down. Unfortunately, the band broke up in 2003, and I can see why. This album did not do very well, and it was very under-promoted, and even though they did try to promote the shit out of it, it still didn't do well. Honestly, after the first two tracks of this record, you're going to get a lot of the same, except for one track, and I'll mention that in a moment. I like the first two tracks. Down on Me and Chemical are good songs. The rest, they just sound too much like those two tracks. If this were a demo, not a full-fledged studio release, I could understand. If this is what they sent to a label, sent to a studio to try to get an album deal where they were going to already have music written and go and record something new that sounds a lot more divergent from what you hear on this record, then I would have given this a lot of praise as a demo. The fact that it's not going to get a lot of praise out of me. The problem is, it is way too much of the same. You have the same hyper angsty, exact carbon copy, nu metal, aggressive stuff that I would have expected from a debut release, from, I guess, any kind of band like this, really. But the sense that's different here is that it's so overtly generic that it's really hard for it to separate from the mold, the already pre-existing mold of bands like this. I picked this album up because I honestly wanted to see if it was any good. I did like the cover art. I also remember that I was given a demo disc years and years ago when I was a wee little lad, about 12 years of age, that featured the first two tracks, Down on Me and Chemical. And it was honestly, they're pretty good tracks. They're very good. They were enough to get at least some airplay on MTV2 at the time, some airplay on the radio, but they're not anything that wasn't already just infesting the airwaves at the time. The only track that's really different from any other track on this record is a track called Shedding, and I'm enunciating because I don't want people to think that they made a track called Shitting, because why would you do that? And the only reason it stands out is that it's an instrumental. It's a very mellow instrumental. It doesn't really make sense to be on this record because it doesn't fit in with any of the other tracks. Normally when you do tracks like these, you want them as an interlude to connect one part of your album to another, or one track to another. Like say the first 3 tracks, that's your intro, okay, to your concept album or whatever. Then you have an interlude that connects that to the next 3 tracks, which is your middle, and then an interlude that connects that to the last 3, which is the end. Okay, I can see doing that. But too many bands often put interludes that don't make any sense to be there. Like they'll have an absolutely ear-blasting, insane fucking record, and then they'll put a track in there that's mellow, decent to listen to, but doesn't make any sense. Look at Strapping Young Lad's Alien, for example. And I talked about that album with Atticus the Death Metaler in the last live hangout that I did. There's a track on that album called 2 Weeks. Now it is sonically divergent from every other track on that record. If you've heard that record, you fucking know what I'm talking about. The thing is, it sits well because it's a bridge between the previous track, Possessions, and the next track, Thalamus. So it's more of an interlude in the truest sense of the term, as opposed to just a random, very mellow, very low-down kind of track that just sits there. I like the track. I've used it in one of my old ancient videos. Why is it there? Anyway, I focused way too much on that. So all in all, my final thoughts on the record, 4.5 out of 10. Unfortunately, this album could have been a lot better, but there's just way too much of the same. It's just way too repetitious, except for one track, and that's not enough to save it. There's so much more that could be done. I understand why the label that they were on, Immortal Records, looked at this as a commercial failure and subsequently dropped them from the label. It's no real big surprise to me there. Anyway, 4.5 out of 10. I'm some guy on the internet. So are you. And one more thing before I take off. I am going to be taking a look at Infestessimum by Ghost, and I got a question that I want to answer. Why are you not looking at their debut album, Opus Eponymous, first? Because, unfortunately, when I was moving here, I crushed it. And I'm not even fucking kidding. It got turned into dust when something that I own, that is very fucking heavy, fell on it and smushed the poor goddamn CD into dust. It was about that moment where I realized I fucked up. So I'm going to be obtaining an actual physical copy of the CD before showing it off and doing a review. So I'm going to be doing their sophomore album, Infestessimum, because it's a word you say every single day in a normal conversation. I'm going to be doing that first. And then I'm going to be doing their debut second. And then I will be doing their most recent album third. So, yeah, that's how that'll go. I figured I'd answer that question and clear out the air there. Anyway, like I said, I'm some guy on the internet. So are you. Rock the fuck on. Take it easy.